Hello everybody, it's Gavin Seim. Let's talk about liberty. This weekend marks the anniversary of the Battle of Bunkerville down at the Bundy Ranch in Nevada, when Americans rallied from all across the country and stood up against the bureaucratic terrorism of government and said, no more. You see, the Battle of Bunkerville wasn't about cows or grazing. It was about law and liberty and justice. It was about tyranny and good and evil. The Bundy family were heroes, patriots who stood up and set an example for America by saying, no more. We will no longer tolerate this lawlessness. We will no longer tolerate this tyranny. And as the government descended on them and the word got out and people started loading up and coming from all over America in historic proportions to stand with them and say, no more. I'll never forget us back here in Washington as we started seeing what was happening. And I remember I had called Cliven Bundy and chatted with him and learned a bit more, and we were coordinating here in Washington among patriots with what was going on. And I remember my brother Nathan and I talking about it and saying, we can't wait, we have to go now. And we hooked up the super camper and we drove 1,200 or so miles down to the Bundy Ranch. And that first night out, as we're driving in the dark through Oregon and had that gnawing feel in the pit of our stomach that you get when you're about to go into a battle. And not knowing what we were going into or how long we were going to be there. And that's what Americans from all over the country were facing as they loaded up and flew and drove and headed down toward the Bundy Ranch to stand up for liberty like America has not seen in any of our lifetimes. And we stood and we went down there on that Saturday in April. And the patriots stood up and they said, no more. When those brave patriots rode out and stood down the BLM and made that line, we didn't win by force of arms. And it's important to know that. You call it what you will, I'll call it divine providence. Because we were outnumbered and we truly thought that blood would be spilled and that the Second American Revolution was going to start that day. Now, we weren't there to throw the first punch or fire the first bullet. The patriots were there for principle and peace and liberty. But the bureaucratic terrorists from the government were there to abuse and to trample and to put the slaves in line. It's a reminder for all of us that we must stand. You see, the Bundy Ranch was just the beginning. The Bundy Ranch was a shot, a thunder that resounded around the world even though not a single shot was fired. Because for the first time in recent history, Americans rallied together and they stood up and they said, no, we will not comply. And as this message continues to roll across the country and more stands are made and things get more tense, we have to continue standing on peace and principle and liberty, America, to restore that for our children. Now, there was a big celebration down at the Bundy Ranch this weekend, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to be there because of the attacks on liberty happening out here in Washington and more things that are continuing to come up out here in the western states. But we continue standing. We continue looking at that example and saying we have to prepare, we have to be vigilant, we have to be ready, because if we do not stand up now, if we keep getting distracted by the side trails and the confusion and the politics, if we keep taking our eye off the ball that is liberty, we will lose it. And our children and our grandchildren will have to spill their blood to take it back. So remember the Bundy Ranch. Remember the Battle of Bunkerville. Remember that the people stood against tyranny, against bureaucratic terrorism, and they stood with their arms in their hands and they stood firm and they were willing to die. You see, we didn't think that we would be coming home when things started getting tense down there at Bunkerville. And the people on the ground knew that, and they stood anyway. Hundreds of patriots standing the line and standing for liberty. We keep standing, America, or liberty is lost. Now is our opportunity. This time, in this generation, is our time to rise up in defense of liberty and stand firm and peaceful and principled, but resolved and courageous to say, we stand. We will not comply. and by God's grace, we will restore liberty. Take care.